Hey, good afternoon, everybody. I'm going to bring the meeting to order right now. I'd like to kick this off and recognize Chairman Perkle. If you could open us up in prayer, please. What number are you?
26. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Bow with me, if you will. Dear Heavenly Father, Lord, I thank you for the day and for your blessings. I pray that you'll give us wisdom and peace. Help us to love one another. Give us clarity of mind as we work to do your will. Amen.
Good afternoon, everybody. We're going to do a little bit of an audible on the agenda. We're going to 369 from Chairman Carpenter has a substitute, and we're going to go ahead and put that second because the substitute is not ready. We're going to go ahead and call up 406 first, but what we're going to do first is one of the things that we want to start doing in this committee is make sure that we highlight the innovation that's occurring in our state. Don't worry, guys, it's only a 2-minute video, but what we want to be able to do at every committee meeting is make sure that everyone becomes more and more aware of what we're doing at higher ed, what we're doing at the technical colleges, and what we're doing with our, I'll say, our for-profit partners in terms of all the places that we need to be leading, not just inside of this state, but also throughout the country. So, Patrick, can you go ahead and cue that up for us? This is compliments of Georgia Tech and some of the things that they're doing at their Institute for Robotics. We thought that you guys would find this pretty interesting given the fact that we see effectively a convergence occurring between AI, ML, robotics, transportation, education, healthcare, et cetera. So hopefully you guys find this interesting. And if you can, Patrick, cue that up and let's go.
IRIM is the Institute for Robotics and Intelligence. IRIM is the Institute for Robotics and Intelligent Machines here at Georgia Tech. It's an interdisciplinary research institute. We have about 40 faculty that are in the core and another 40 or 50 that are affiliates and a couple of hundred graduate students doing robotics research. And it's essentially the organizing structure for the research and education in robotics here at Georgia Tech. We offer 2 advanced degree programs, a PhD in robotics and a master's degree in robotics. And the thing that makes those degree programs special is the interdisciplinary nature of the programs. And we achieve that interdisciplinarity both by a set of courses that we require the students to take to enforce breadth in their educational experience, and also by creating courses that require them to go out and collaborate on research projects with professors from multiple areas.
The EPIC Lab at Georgia Tech stands for the Exoskeleton and Prosthetic Intelligent Controls Lab. And our interest is really in the design, development, and testing of exoskeleton devices, prosthetic devices, and rehab robotics from the ground up. My research at Georgia Tech is really centered around looking at how we can improve quality of life for people with physical disabilities. So I partner with engineers and roboticists and students here at Tech to investigate how wearable technology can improve quality of life for people with disabilities.
A few years ago, we created a robotics test bed called the Robotarium. The Robotarium is an environment that supports many robots. They're very small, equipped with cameras, and attached to the internet, so that anybody can do robotics experiments for free from anywhere in the world.
One of the coolest things about working here is that I work on drones, so being able to be at the forefront of drone research involving swarm robotics is super exciting to me. We're leveling the playing field for users by giving them access to this swarm robotics test bed. In addition to this, we're allowing younger and younger students to be introduced to robotics at an earlier age.
So one of the things that really distinguishes the work that we do compared to a lot of other universities is that it's driven by applications, and particularly applications that are beneficial to humanity, but not at a superficial level.
My credential as a certified prosthetist orthotist is unique for a program in robotics research and education because I have the experience in working with patients in a real-world clinical environment that need real solutions to real problems.
The best thing about robotics at Georgia Tech is the community. The professors here genuinely are interested in collaboration with each other, genuinely interested in interdisciplinary collaboration. There's an intellectual openness here.
And I think that's the big goal of all of the people that are involved in our work here in robotics research and education at Georgia Tech, is to really try to improve the human condition and make the world a better place.
At Georgia Tech, our mission is to improve the human condition, making the needed a reality and the impossible possible.
Hey guys, I sure do hope that you like that. I think we'll continue to do that, just making sure if you have any recommendations, please let us know. But we wanted to definitely start it out with the flagship university of our state, Georgia Tech. So thank you very much, Chairman Dubnik, and thank you, Chairman Perkle. All right, just making sure we know where everyone stands. The last thing that I want to mention is on the agenda, 307 is going to be pulled off of today's agenda. So today we will only be hearing 406 first, and then we'll hear 369. Chairman Jaspers, would you like to present the bill, please?
Chairman and committee, especially for hearing House Bill 406. Thank you for taking the time to be here. I think there's like 9 different meetings going on right now. 406 is the work of the Joint Commission on Electrification of Transportation. It was a joint study committee by the House and the Senate. Senator Gooch and I chaired it. Members were Chairman Powell, Chairman Parsons, Chairman Corbett, and as transportation chairman, I added Vice Chairman Brad Thomas and Spencer Fry to kind of round that group out, which ended up being very, very important. We had 7 meetings across the state. We created, I didn't create it, a 700-page document that covers everything you ever wanted to know about electric vehicles and electrification and all sorts of different rabbits that you can chase when you have a joint committee meeting like that. Catherine Russell, who is the Senate research analyst, she'll be here in a few moments for the Department of Ag, was the mastermind behind it. We give her all the credit. If Senator Gooch takes any, no. It is Catherine Russell did it all, and we really appreciated her doing that. The goal at the beginning was very, very simple, and it maintained to be very simple. That was to make sure that as we move from a carbon-based fuel of gasoline, diesel, propane, and others to electricity in some areas, that we were going to maintain our funding for House Bill 170. And those of y'all who remember, who were here then and who were not, have always heard us in transportation talk about House Bill 170 and how it creates the funding mechanism for roads and bridge repair in the state of Georgia. And so those of us who are involved in this day to day know how critically important it is and how we have to make sure that in essence, as I was telling the school group the other day, that everybody pays their fair share when they drive the roads of our state to keep it maintained. And I think we met our goal in this bill. And so we did, that was our goal. So how do we do it? And that's what's in front of you. And, how many pages is it? 16, I think, is in my memory. And, when I first got it, I went, oh my gosh. But Jenna Doldy from Legislative Council is fabulous in working on these. And I appreciate her work. If we'll just kind of go through it, if it's okay, Mr. Chairman. And I also throw out, there was a lot of, I'm just give you just one little bit of background. And the President Biden and Congress have really made EV one of their forefront things. And many of the manufacturers that we heard from throughout the thing talked about it, how they've invested in it, how they're putting EVs in the marketplace. We knew that was going to create those funding challenges for us. So if you look at part 1, this language Representative Oliver, I think there were 19 lawyers that worked on this. I mean, I paid for everybody, I believe I paid for everyone's summer vacation on just on page 2. And just real quickly, in common terms, this language allows convenience stores and others of the owners of EV charging equipment to sell electricity by the kilowatt hour for the sole purpose of charging an electric vehicle. This language, like I say, represents a careful crafted compromise between all parties that was negotiated at the end of last year, in the last session, and changed just a little bit and then agreed to. It also reflects the findings of our committee. And it's deep, but when you're dealing with the Territorial Act, as Chairman Parsons is the authority on that, can address any questions on that. I'll shift them to you, Chairman Parsons, because you're the one. We keep going through. Now, it starts on section 2. And so what Legislative Council did was took all the law surrounding the sale of gasoline as a fuel, and then took it and transferred that into electricity. That's a simple thing from lines 2, right here on line 52 to 222, comes from the gasoline code, almost word for word, substituting electricity and little different phrases throughout it to make sure that we treat it like fuel, because that's what we're saying that it is. And because these things are going to expand. And to divert just a little bit, when during the Biden administration in the last Congress gave us, or all the states, $125 million in Georgia to facilitate the installation through private industry EV chargers throughout the state. And state planning director has been working very hard on that. The first phase is underway, and we have 4 more years of that. So this kind of gives it to work. Now, what it does is it keeps it under the Department of Agriculture, so that, because they do gasoline now, it transfers into them for electric vehicles, because they're everywhere. And, we know and very well aware that you'll see the effective dates are down the road, because we've got to make sure that the Department of Ag can scale up, that we include money in their budget to be able to do this, that they have testing equipment that's appropriate and safe for these gentlemen and ladies to use when they're testing it throughout the state. Because it really came very clear during the Joint Commission that people wanted accuracy. Well, they went to a electric vehicle charging station. They wanted to know that, number one, it was accurate. And there's no way to know right now. They wanted to know that it was safe, because this is electricity. And I'm a guy that's scared of electricity, because I'm not joking. I stuck eye tweezers in a bathroom socket when I was a little kid, and I've learned my lesson. And, so I'm a little bit timid of it. But they wanted those two things more than anything as we talk to people about this. This bill does that. And so as you can look through, over to line 222, it very clearly covers all that. It's a lot. In part 3, the House, we have the ability to tax. And so we're changing the tax to cover electricity with the Department of Revenue. Were very, very helpful to me in crafting the language that made sure that we captured the excise tax, just like we do it on gasoline, that we do it on the kilowatt hour. And so this language does that throughout part 3, and all the little different things that they have to do. The Legislative Council thought were important there. Some people ask me questions. I'm going to go back if you can. There's a question you'll see on line 79. I want to address that, because that came up. People have come up to me in the hallway and talked about line 79. When we're talking about investigators believing in violation of this article, we're talking about safety of chargers in the state, is occurred or about to occur. That comes from motor fuel, because if you're an inspector out on a site and you see a dangerous situation that could occur, that's why about is in there. Because we had the first thing we said, is that in code, is the definition. Ms. Doty was very clear that that's what that's about. Is that as an inspector is sitting on site, they see something that may happen, they see it there, they're able to take to work on it. I like to pull out little things that people ask about. You look at number 315, people said, how does it identify electricity? Right there it is. It says, you know, these terms are used as electricity used as a motor fuel. We are not concerned about any other that's out there. 3.3 is records, and it just kind of moves on through the bill. It's just other little things. And on line 4, on part 4 at the very end, you show those effective dates. You know, that's where we're at right today. Ms. Russell from Department of Ag and I've talked a number of times. We may have to move those out. We're just trying to figure that out. But that's where we're at today, and be able to get this going and get these things regulated as we need to. Mr. Chairman, that's the bill. It's been a lot of work for what seems to be so simple, but it has been very time-consuming.
Well, thank you very much, Chairman Jaspers. We appreciate that overview. I want to go ahead and, well, if there are any questions from the committee right now, and then we'll go to the speakers list, if that's okay, everyone. So that's the order that we're going to take. But right now, I am not seeing anyone with a question for you. Well, excuse me, I apologize. Chairman Perkle.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Mr. Chairman, you did a lot of work on this, and I appreciate it. The question I have, and I've not researched it fully enough, beginning on lines 308, it appears that is this basically we're getting ready for other alternative?
Oh, yeah, thank you. I didn't mention that. You know, yes, absolutely. I think we are, you know, we looked at, you know, when you meet for 7 different times and you meet with people all over the United States, you look at line 309, we talk about hydrogen. And absolutely, hydrogen is a fuel of the future. You know, talked to a gentleman in Australia. I mean, it's been a lot of fun to do this because you've got to talk to people all over the world. And hydrogen is being used in passenger cars in Australia. Now, not here yet. You know, most people in this world think that hydrogen is going to be used for heavy trucks because just the lightness of it. You know, the batteries on the heavy trucks are as heavy as the truck and may not be as useful. But we did try to make sure we looked down the road, Chairman Perkle, to pick up hydrogen where we could and other little things that we can. Is that what you were asking?
Yes, that was,
Okay.
but I was also, as you were answering, I was trying to listen and look at the same time. The excise tax for, I see they're on 308, electricity not less than 33.7 kW. So we know what the excise tax is for fuel.
Well, that's excuse me, that's the gallon equivalent, those numbers right there are.
So we would just do as our Georgia Tech friends would do, we would do a conversion to get the excise.
Yes.
Thank you.
And in House Bill 170, the visionaries who worked on that bill 10 years ago really looked at that and gave them the opportunity, the revenue, the ability to do that now. I mean, they, you know, they effectively change it every year based on the Consumer Price Index. They keep it up to date. They did that for motor fuel. And so we're adding the electricity in there too, so they'll be able to measure and accurately tax that.
One last question,
Sure.
Mr. Chair, if I could. So also as part of the changing each year for the excise tax is based on CAFE standards as well. So all this will fall under that as well?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
And, you know, you look there on line 285, we're currently, there's a sunset of 2025. We're just taking that out. That's just going to keep our fuel at where it is, the excise tax appropriately for where the fuel cost is.
Thank you, Chairman Perkle. Chair recognizes Representative Cox.
Chairman, thank you. This is great. Appreciate the work you've done. Question, you had mentioned the federal government as it relates to charging stations. How much money was that allocated?
For Georgia, for the next 5 years, I think it's 127 million or 6. Don't count me on this, but that kind of volume.
Okay, is it specific to it must be for EV, or those stations also able to be what Chairman Perkel was saying, maybe the compressed or hydrogen or liquefied, or self-charging roads or stuff as such, or is it very specific to EV charging?
We'll have to find out, Representative. I'm not sure, but I can almost say with certainty it is 100% EV because electric vehicle charging stations. And I know that planning director has worked very hard, and I'll contact her and let you get back with you, but I'm not sure if it can be expanded to other fuels, but I don't think so. But I think, because you got to go back to just where we're at in our manufacturing world right now. We're at electric, but we're not at hydrogen. And so there's a big difference there. We're just not there yet.
Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Cox. Chair recognizes Representative Park.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for the bill. Fascinating. I did have a few questions, just for my better understanding.
Sure.
So when we're transitioning from gasoline to electricity for purposes of ensuring that HB 170 is fully funded, is it an apples to apples comparison, or is there any concern where, for example, if the weight of electric vehicles is different, it can result, or the technology is such that they become more efficient, that we could still see a decline in revenue for purposes of roads and bridges?
Yeah, yes, sir, that's possible, and that's why there'll be somebody sitting in that seat, in my seat, to make sure we keep it there. Because I think, it's our responsibility for roads and bridges and safety and funding, and there'll be somebody here to take a look at that.
And a follow-up, if I may.
Sure.
Are other states that are working on the electrification of their own transportation grids taking a similar approach, other states and other countries, when it comes to ensuring that electricity is taxed in the same way as fuel?
No.
Okay.
We are the leader. We are absolutely the cutting edge of this. There's about, I think the last I've heard, there were about 6 other states looking at some type of method, but with this is probably the most effective, broad. We're the leader. I tell you, Representative, we are the leaders in transportation, period. And we always have been. I remember when Speaker Ralston put me in this thing, he said, it's your job to make sure we stay the leader. And this is just kind of an outgrowth from it. But no, we're the cutting edge.
Thank you.
That's why we're in here with Chairman.
Thank you, Chairman Jaspers. I appreciate that. And Representative Park, I double down on what Chairman Jaspers is saying. We've done a lot of, I'll say, view, and I'd like to think we know everything that's going on in the other 49 states, but I do think at the very least we're leading edge or bleeding edge, and I think that's where we want to be. So, Chairman Williamson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chairman Jaspers, again, I'll join the chorus of congratulating you on your hard work on this. I'm just trying to get my head around a couple of things, and I think 2 members have already kind of addressed this, but you're saying on lines 308 through 310, this is the per gallon of gasoline, or approximately the per gallon of gasoline and or diesel equivalent energy?
Yeah, you look at line 302 through 305 describes that, Cox Leader, and the standard about the gallon equivalent of a compressed gas is that. Electricity shall be this. They have to have a framework to set up to tax by.
And to Representative Park's point, then, that's assuming this sort of equivalent weight and speed then to
That's just what a gallon of gas. So you will use more electricity the more heavy it is, just like you would. My truck uses more than somebody else's.
Wonder why.
Yeah.
But
Big
anyhow,
truck,
and just a follow-up question. So all these excise taxes, if you will, be collected by the distributor, the wholesaler, just like they are on the gasoline and.
No, there's a difference in that.
Okay.
The fine folks from Georgia Power and the EMCs in our negotiations are talking about this would like the retailer to pay those. And, because at some points, the electricity is not going to come through a separate circuit. It may pass through a circuit that may be within a building. If you're in a restaurant, you have extra, it's going to be difficult, but if you happen to have the extra circuit, it can run through there. And so it's going to be at that charging station when the retail purchase is made, just like we're buying a Coca-Cola or a donut.
And just one follow-up
Sure.
question again. So even the liquefied natural gas and hydrogen being they would also be
Yeah,
collected by
the
the
natural
retailer?
gas is done now. We just added that. You know, there are, you know, ALG. There's a lot of people who use liquefied natural gas as a fuel now, and there just wasn't a definition. We just put liquefied in there. It's already there. But hydrogen, yeah, we're gonna tax it when the consumer buys it. Just the way common is when you buy Coca-Cola, we're gonna get you there.
Thank you.
And thank you for using the Coke reference and not that other competitor.
Oh my!
Thank you so much. Okay. Representative Thomas.
Thank you, Chairman Jaspers. I've very much enjoyed working with you over many, many months, working through this bill. I want to, first of all, start with talking about how much time that I know that you spent hours. I mean, I can't tell you, we spent hours on telephone just talking through this bill.
Yeah.
One of the things that I felt like you really did well was looking at how are we going to staff, or how are we going to build our infrastructure of the future, which is the whole point of this committee. And the fact that you had enough foresight to pick up hydrogen and some of these other fuel sources, because that was something that did come out in committee. I found, like, do you remember what the average battery weight on one of those big trucks was by any chance?
Oh no, sir. I
It was
do not.
15,000 pounds, I remember. Sorry.
How much did you say?
15,000 pounds. I know you're doing truck weights over in your committee right now. But that's one of the reasons why I felt like when I saw the hydrogen part of that because that really probably makes more sense for larger commercial applications. So I actually appreciate you having the foresight of doing that. And then additionally, I also wanted to talk a little bit about just the concerns that we did hear about people. Could you expound on that just a little bit more about people that were concerned? They were concerned they were going to go pay for a kilowatt hour, and there's no real way to know they were getting a kilowatt hour. I know you kind of mentioned it, but
We had consumed, yes, sir. And I just want to say thank you, Representative Thomas. You know, as a chairman, you can add people to your study committees, and you just put them under your committee. And I wanted Representative Thomas because he's an engineer. And, you know, there's technical sides of this that Rick doesn't know and didn't know. And I appreciate you always being there to answer my question about how does this work, or how, especially this coming up. The issue we've got coming now toward us is the testing. And, you know, but there were consumers that were just worried. I mean, how did they know they were getting what they're getting? They don't know. I mean, and you know, I'm not saying that there's bad players in the market, or nobody is, but there's going to be. And we know there's going to be. And, you know, we had testimony on auto dealers, on storage of cars, on direct sales. We chased every rabbit there was in the world. And, but I think people looked at us to make sure that we, as a group, made sure they were safe and we were accurate in the taxing. And because nobody wants to pay more, and nobody wants to pay, they want to pay what's due. And I think you hear that throughout this bill. What's due, we'll do that.
I think you've done great work here. And I've got one other question real quick. Line 48, it says the term motor fuel means gasoline, but is that all inclusive, like gasoline and diesel? I'm just, that was one little thing that caught my eye, and I should have caught you before you got here today, and I didn't get a chance. I just read this.
Okay, look, that's in the code section for advertisements, motor
Okay.
fuel, free gifts, things like that.
Okay.
Not as a definition for the bill.
Okay.
Yes,
Thank you.
sir.
Thank you, Representative Thomas. We're going to go have one more question, and then we're going to go to the speakers. Representative Buckner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've been hearing quite a bit of buzz about this, and I know you've been working hard. One of the things that was brought to my attention is how do we handle charging at home and charging at a retail place as far as how it is going to be charged and what we will do about taxes and capture that tax money, because these cars, as we believe, are going to be heavier. They're going to have an impact on the road, so we're going to need every road penny we can find for at least for a little while in the beginning to get
Sure, now, just on the roads, they're not significantly heavier than your general vehicle, not especially a truck like I am. But right now, currently in 170, they created, home charging, where you, as an EV owner, you get a special tag. That tag comes off the, whatever the name of that number is, that's on your car. It identifies you as an electric car, your VIN. Thank you, ma'am. And you buy an electric vehicle tag, or you buy that. That's what you pay your tax on. And the fee is right now, I think, $216 a year. That's supposed to cover your use of the roads, as any of us, the rest of us, are paying motor fuel tax or the excise tax. It's supposed to be about the same for the average person. And so we get it there. Now, if you're at a convenience store, Targets, where I've seen these, restaurants are going to be a great place for these, convenience stores, and just wherever an investor wants to put them. That's where we're going to get the excise tax right there at the sale of power at that charging station.
So at the home, it'll be the regular rate that they
Yes,
pay for
ma'am.
their house.
Yeah, we don't want to touch that. I mean, I think the very consensus was leaving that alone. I will throw out, just for conversation, there's a push, or not push, but you're going to see GDOT this year do a pilot program on vehicle miles traveled. And so that would allow someone, if they chose to, or maybe down the road the legislature will decide to make everyone who has an EV do vehicles miles traveled. So that means you'll start a year with, let's say your car has 70,000 miles on it, and you'll pay per mile that you drive. That concept's out there. It's a lot of discussion. There's a lot of personal issues about Big Brother knowing what you're doing and all that kind of stuff. But our cars, the modern cars, all do this now. And so, but the collection and what do you do if they don't pay, I don't think we worked that out. But GDOT is going to be taking part in a nationwide evaluation on vehicle miles traveled. And they'll let us know next year how that turns out.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Representative Buckner. We're going to go ahead and move to public comment. We have 6 speakers signed up. I am not going to put a time limit on, but I would ask that you are concise, pithy, and to the point. So we're going to start with Ben Kessler, please.
Do you want me to start? Okay. Well, good afternoon. Appreciate the opportunity, committee members and chairman. Thank you for the work on this bill. My name is Ben Kessler. I'm the representative for ChargePoint. We are North America and Europe's largest charging provider, and certainly have a presence here in Georgia. We were involved in the Joint Committee on Transportation Electrification and the work from the Governor's Office on electric vehicles. So certainly appreciate the efforts of Georgia to be a leader in innovation in transportation mobility. With this bill, HB 406, we certainly support the intent of it. The charge for charge language is something that industry and EV drivers have agreed on for a while, that we should be charged on a volumetric basis of how folks charge their vehicles rather than the time that they're spent in the vehicle charging. For the other portions of the bill for inspection, verification, and taxation, we do have some improvements to offer. Certainly, we would like to see alignment with national standards from the U.S. Department of Commerce, from the National Institute of Standards and Technology, for the charging station tolerances to meet that verification standard from the Commission, the Agricultural Commission. Certainly, we would like to see some flexibility in how we display the certificate of registration. In the current language right now, it's placed upon the station. We would like to see some flexibility that would allow us to put it through our app or through the vehicle or through whatever the digital medium that someone's accessing to pay and utilize that station and conduct a retail transaction. We would also like to see some expansion of the definition of residential to include multifamily, workplace, and visitors, as some of these folks may be at a public place utilizing this, but are a resident of the location where they're under, or a visitor of an amenity location. And the last thing we'll offer, just to be concise, is extending timelines for taxation out to 2028 to give time for agriculture to staff up, promulgate the rules, and acquire the testing equipment to make sure that folks are getting that kilowatt hour and are being taxed upon that verified kilowatt hour. So I'll leave it there. Appreciate the opportunity, Chairman, and thank you, committee members.
Thank you, Mr. Kessler. Any questions for the speaker? You're off the hook.
Thank you.
Next speaker is Louis Massey.
Thank you, Chairman Jones and members of the committee. My name is Louis Massey with Impact Public Affairs, and we have the honor of representing Tesla in Georgia. And I want to echo the chorus for Chairman Jaspers and thank him for all the time that he has spent on this issue, both between the sessions and earlier in this session. Tesla certainly supports the concept behind what Chairman Jaspers and the study committee is trying to do, Senator Gooch and the other leaders in that committee. We also have a couple of points that we would love for you to consider in terms of changes to the bill. Tesla's charging stations, they have about 900 now across the state, all over Georgia. They do not actually have displays on them. They do display the information that's mentioned in the bill, both on the app and in the display in the car. So we have some recommended language that I think Chairman Jaspers has to allow them to continue to do that. We also echo what Ben said earlier about multifamily homes. We believe that that's also people charging at home and that they should be exempt from the taxation and regulation. The last point that I'll mention briefly is on taxes. The way that we read the current bill, there could be 4 levels of taxes and fees imposed on this industry as it relates to EVs. Tesla currently pays sales tax on the electricity that they purchase from Georgia Power, and that would continue. If the language in the bill, if we're reading it right, if you change from time to kilowatt hour, which we certainly support, the driver would then pay sales tax and the excise tax on the electricity used for charging the car. And in addition, as was mentioned earlier by Chairman Jaspers, there is an annual fee on an EV driver. So that would be the 4th level of taxes and fees. I don't know whether that is intended or not. I just think that's something that ought to have a little bit more discussion. Lastly, I'll say that Tesla has over 32,000 Teslas now are driven in Georgia. I mentioned they have 900 charging stations all across the state. That's in about 200 locations. Half of those chargers approximately are fast and half are destination chargers. So Tesla's footprint continues to expand across the state, and we look forward to continuing to work with the committee and Chairman Jones and Chairman Jaspers on this issue. Thank you.
Mr. Massey, it looks like you might be off, but I do have a question for you.
Yes, sir.
I appreciate your comment regarding Tesla and their charging stations not having, I'll say, an LCD panel, but rather it's either in-car or via app right now. Does Tesla have a thought on wireless charging? So as we see that mature, over the next few years, we're going to see wireless charging. So the station won't even be there. It'll just either be stationary when you're just sitting on the plate or as you're moving. Does Tesla have an opinion on that?
Well, I don't know for sure, Chairman Jones. I know there's a lot of advances you and I have discussed in that regard, and I'm sure that they are looking at that and studying that. I have not had specific conversations recently with them about that issue.
All right, thank you, Mr. Massey. I spoke too soon. You're not off the hook. Is that Clint?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This will be quick and painless. You mentioned the multifamily, and that was charging at home. So I guess you're speaking about, so I have an apartment here in town when we're in session, and there are some spaces reserved for electric vehicle charging. That's what you're talking about
Yes,
there.
sir.
Are those, because I don't have one, do they charge a fee when you're charging at those, or are they complimentary, or how
I
do
think
they get
that
paid
depends
for?
on the apartment complex. For Tesla, the drivers have an account and it automatically goes onto their credit or debit card, and the cost would be dependent on a destination charger versus a fast charger. And right now, they're having to charge by time, and thanks to Chairman Jaspers and others, hopefully this bill would allow them to charge by the kilowatt hour. There are some others that charge, and there are others, some apartment complexes I'm familiar with actually provide that free of charge to the residents.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Chairman Williamson.
Thank you, Mr. Massey. Remind me, do we still offer an income tax opportunity for apartment owners to put in EV charging stations? Is there an income tax credit still in
I'm not
place? I know
sure. There may
was
be
a few
somebody
years
here
back.
from the apartment group. Maybe not.
We can find it out.
Yeah, I'm
offline.
not-
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Massey, I think you can now be excused from the
Thank
witness
you.
stand.
Thank you.
Stephanie Gossman.
Well, good afternoon. Thank you for the opportunity to speak in support of House Bill 406 today. I especially appreciate Chairman Jasper's leadership this past year through the Joint Study Committee on the Electrification of Transportation, which did include many others on this committee who all spent countless hours to develop recommendations reflected in House Bill 406. My name is Stephanie Gossman. I'm the Electric Transportation Manager for Georgia Power Company. And in this role, I lead the department that's responsible for the development, implementation, and administration of Georgia Power's electric transportation offerings for our customers. The goal for my team each day is to partner with our customers to reduce barriers as they integrate electric transportation technologies into their lives. And one such barrier that exists for our customers, both EV charging service providers and EV drivers, is the desire to sell and purchase EV charging services by the kilowatt hour instead of per unit of time throughout Georgia. Although nothing in the Territorial Act prohibits EV charging companies from billing by the kilowatt hour for charging services, we recognize through collaboration with multiple stakeholders the past 2 years that this area needs additional clarity. And that is why it's critical to pass legislation to make it clear that charging companies can bill by the kilowatt hour without violating the law. Billing for EV charging services by the kilowatt hour is important to the growing number of EV drivers in Georgia because it makes more sense to pay for the energy consumed instead of the amount of time someone is plugged into the charging station. EV batteries are measured by kilowatt hours, similar to how a gas tank is measured in gallons, and paying for the energy consumed in kilowatt hours is analogous to paying for the gas you pump instead of the time you spend at the pump. Georgia Power serves as an EV charging service provider of last resort with less than 3% of the public charging market in Georgia. All of Georgia Power's chargers are capable of complying with the proposed legislation, and we look forward to working with Chairman Jones, Chairman Jaspers, and the members of this committee as the bill moves through the legislative process. Given Georgia's leadership among the nation with our growing EV ecosystem, it's imperative that we set the right foundation on behalf of all Georgians. Thank you for your time. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Gossman. You do have a question, Representative Thomas.
Hey, good to see you.
Hey.
I want to talk a little bit about the specifics of charging in the typical EV customer. Well, actually, before we go on that, can you explain NEVI compliant real quick? Can you get into that and specifically about how it has to be sold to be NEVI compliant?
I will hit it briefly.
Okay, yeah, just real high level.
So NEVI compliance, there is a component of it that I would say the language could be flexible, but one interpretation is that it requires the ability to charge by the kilowatt hour.
Thank you. Yeah, that was my first one. My second one has to do with the typical EV customer and how they charge. I mean, how do you typically see them going to charging stations throughout the state, or do they typically charge at home?
So depending on the reference, it's 80 to 90% are the typical stats in terms of charging at home versus charging in the workplace or out in public.
So what we typically do, is there not a fee or something associated with an EV every year, and that's kind of how we recoup that? And maybe I'll save that for Representative or Chairman Jaspers later. But
well,
go ahead.
I will say,
Yeah.
I'm an EV driver of almost 10 years. So yes, what Chairman Jaspers mentioned before in terms of the tax for a pure EV is correct, that there's an additional fee annually to recoup what would be the average amount expected to pay for a driver driving an EV instead of the gas tax. There are some aspects of that for improvement, and that's what I'm excited about in terms of the GDOT pilot that he mentioned too.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Stephanie.
Thanks.
Thank you. Ms. Gossman, you don't have any more questions, so we appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jason Bragg.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Jason Bragg, Vice President of Government Relations with Georgia EMC, representing our state's 41 electric co-ops throughout the state, which most of you all in here are familiar with them and primarily serve rural Georgia and cover a large, about 73% of our state's land mass, serving about 4.4 million Georgians. Just wanted to thank, echo Georgia Power's comments largely, wanted to thank Chairman Jaspers, Chairman Parsons, Representative Thomas, and Chairman Powell that all served on the study committee. The language that he went over, in particular in Part 1, Section 1.1, that he did a great job of explaining how that allows convenience stores and other owners of EV charging stations to sell electricity by the kilowatt hour. Our members are okay with that change. That language was carefully crafted as Chairman Jaspers laid out. All parties have agreed to that, and it also reflects the findings of the study committee. I will limit my comments to that piece of the bills because it's really the only piece of this bill that I think impacts our members, but I'm happy to take any questions from the committee if there are any.
Mr. Bragg, you do have a question?
Sure.
Representative Oliver.
I'll ask this to you, and I should have asked it to the Georgia Power. For all the other southern states that Southern Company covers and that you're familiar with, are they similarly proceeding to charge on kilowatt hours? Or how uniform, if there is any uniformity, about whether other states are doing on taxation?
I don't know if I know the exact answer, but I do know there are a few. Somebody else may know that better than me, but I think there are a few states that have already changed this, or at least are looking at changing it. I don't know the number, but I know that a lot of them are looking at it.
Pardon me, Mr. Bragg. I'm going to go ahead and take a little bit of a privilege. Is Ms. Gossman still here, and does she possibly have an answer for that?
We're just in Georgia.
Yeah. Ms. Gossman, I'm going to have Representative Oliver ask the question again, unless you heard it.
I heard it.
Okay.
And it's a very good question. So it depends. Each state has different laws, as you well know. And so, for example, in Alabama, which is one of the Southern Company territories, they do allow for EV charging services by the kilowatt hour already. Now, that was a different process through regulatory means because their laws are different, but it is different state to state.
At some point, Mr. Chairman or Chairman Jaspers, I'd like to know who on this, and I'll use Southern Company states as an example, who's charging the most on taxation, who's charging the least? Are we coming in at the bottom? Or do we know yet? Do we know that yet?
I don't know that. You mean charging as we do it as a excise tax equivalent to a gasoline?
Right. I'm just curious. So Southern Company has a strategy for different states, I'm sure, because just curious about where we're coming in the range of revenue we're intend to generate or expect to generate.
I'm looking off. I don't know that answer, ma'am. Yeah, I think, I don't know. We will certainly find out where we rank fuel tax wise.
Thank you.
Representative Oliver, do you have anything else for Ms. Gossman? No. Ms. Gossman, thank you.
Thanks.
Mr. Bragg, if you could come back up. I'm not sure. I now have 3 lights blinking, so I'm not sure if they're you or Ms. Gossman. So
Okay.
we're going to go ahead and hold
Sure.
1 second if that's all
Yes,
right.
sir.
Okay. So Representative Park is for Mr. Bragg?
It was for Ms. Gossman.
Oh, sorry, Ms. Gossman.
Sorry.
We're going ahead and we're going to get your steps up today. Yeah, there's a wellness factor to this.
10 at a time. Got it.
Okay.
Thank you so much. So kind of going along the lines of Mary Margaret Oliver's questions, I was also curious, especially if there's difference in tax rates in the different areas that you cover, does that have any impact on the transition toward electrification? Whereas, for example, if we have a higher tax rate, does that begin slowing down, this transition? Does that result in greater utilization at home as opposed to, these charging stations at convenience stores? Do you have any data, or is it still kind of too new to get a good understanding?
It's a very good question. It is a very new, goal that we are embarking on here in terms of the taxation piece. So I don't have data on that specifically, but very good question, and we look to learn more.
Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Park. Representative Cox?
Yeah, it's probably to you as well, but we'll see. It could be for him. We'll ask it to both. Electricity modulates at certain parts and times of the day, right, or night. Are we locking in at a rate per kilowatt hour? Is that how this will play out, or is it going to modulate based on the time of day? Is there going to be some type of storage battery that we're holding at a facility? What does that look like? Brainstorming here.
There's a lot packed into that question, and I will let Mr. Bragg jump in on this one too if there's anything you'd like to add, but I'll start off by saying there's one piece of what you just described are the rates aspect, right? The energy tariffs that customers can choose to be on. And so there are different rate options, and we feel strongly in providing those options to customers that are rates that are carefully designed to meet their needs without cross-subsidizing, right? Putting any upward pressure on other customers of the same class. So there's flexibility for customers to choose whether they're a business customer, whether they're a residential customer within EV charging, and that's something that we've been working on closely too as this market develops.
Yeah, I would echo those comments. I mean, our state's 41 EMCs. I don't know the exact number, but I know that we had at one point a few years ago more than 18 of those 41 that offer some type of residential EV charging rate. On the commercial side, I know of one, and I know others that we're working with. I know we have having some discussions with some of the convenience stores about what a rate may look like in our service territory. The commercial charging side is kind of new in terms of how it's going to be done on the retail level per se. And so, we're kind of still exploring that, but there are a number of different options that our EMCs have available for customers, both on the business side and the residential side right now.
Okay, I sense it's a beta test, if you will, to understand how it's going to work. Your thoughts, Chairman?
I'll just add too that during our, all the discussions we had, that there are EMCs that allow for a different rate at midnight. If you set your timer on your charger to come on at midnight, it runs till whatever time they've agreed to in the morning. It's at a significantly lower rate than you would if you're running what everybody else is running their dishwasher and dryer.
And the annual tax that, and forgive me because I don't drive an EV, but the annual tax historically has been to help cover roads. Was that kind of the purpose of that? Am I correct?
Absolutely, the fee.
Okay.
Yes,
so we're going to have a sales tax, an excess tax, and an annual tax. I thought I heard Tesla say a fourth tax too. I was just trying to understand that process. And that's all I have.
Mr. Chairman, did you need to respond? Do you need to respond to that?
No, there's had to be something I was reading.
I apologize. Yes, sir.
All
right. Representative Tran, I'm not sure if it's for Ms. Gossman or Mr. Bragg. My apologies.
I'm not sure Mr. Chairman, but so idle fees, how would this tax apply to idle fees?
Chairman Jaspers?
Fees?
Yes, sir. So some of the charging units, like Tesla and ChargePoint, if your car is plugged in, but it's not charging, they start to charge a higher fee for each minute you're there not charging.
Well, that's the individual supplier. I mean, they're sitting here, they can answer that, but it's essentially their choice. That's to get you off their charger. And, but still, on our side, you're not using any power. That's the bottom line. We're only concerned when you're downloading power.
Okay, thank you.
I believe you both now are off the stand, so thank you so much.
Thank you.
Next is Angela Holland.
Thank you, Chairman and members of the committee, for allowing me to speak on this bill. I'm Angela Holland. I serve as the president of the Georgia Association of Convenience Stores. Our organization represents about a third of the convenience stores in the state. It includes small multi-generational businesses as well as large chains, and daily we process over 7 million transactions. Convenience stores, our number one priority is to fuel motorists, and whether that's fossil fuels, compressed natural gas, propane, alternative fuels, including hydrogen, ethanol, biodiesel, electricity, or Slurpee. Georgia is the 5th most saturated state in the nation with over 6,600 convenience stores. So with so many convenience stores on prime real estate, we're poised to be the leader for the electric charging vehicle consumption to Georgia's drivers, if only we're allowed to do so. There's approximately one convenience store in every 9 square miles, and this statistic places our stores closer to drivers than any other retail channel, and we feel this is a good opportunity to help move the needle towards electric. According to the Department of Agriculture, convenience stores in Georgia provide nearly 150,000 gas pumps to motorists. And so now I'm going to just kind of pause and say that I am really nervous about making this testimony because so many of you have heard this multiple times. I think we testified on this issue ad nauseum at least 8 times last year. And many of you have not been in on any of the committees that have taken up the issue. So last year, Chairman Powell introduced a bill that unanimously passed out of Energy, Utilities, and Telecom Committee and never advanced any further. And then we had a Senate Study Committee resolution that passed, and we had several study committee meetings during the fall where our organization testified. And then also during the fall, the Public Service Commission included electric vehicle charging in the final agreement of the 2022 rate case. And all of that has bearing on this. Chairman Powell's bill last year asked for 3 things. It asked to change this current state law that prohibits the reselling of electricity. It asked that the utility company provide an electric vehicle charging rate. And most contentiously, it asked that the regulated utility company in Georgia set up a separate subsidiary in order to level the playing field in the charging industry, much like they do in outdoor lighting and natural gas. So skip forward to the 2022 rate case this fall. The PSC in docket 44280 set some parameters around EV charging for Georgia Power, and they do the following. Georgia Power must file a community charging plan identifying no more than 11 installations in the forthcoming year. So I'm not sure if that's 11 in the 1 year or 11 each year for the 3 years. This plan also should focus on locations in underserved areas, not to be located within 1 mile of a designated alternative fuel corridor where funding is provided through Georgia Electric Vehicle Infrastructure Deployment Plan. Once their plan is filed, private EV providers have a one-time 60-day right of refusal to claim a location within 15 miles of the Georgia Power proposed location. Additionally, the Make Ready program was extended, and I'm not clear how much funding will be available to install chargers, but I will work on clarifying that information. I mentioned the Georgia Electric Vehicle Infrastructure Deployment Plan. That's a mouthful. That plan was developed this fall by the Georgia DOT for Georgia to receive $135 million in federal funding to build a network of charging stations. And the DOT did a fantastic job on their proposal. They identified what's called a NEVI corridors, and NEVI is the acronym for the National Electric Vehicle Infrastructure Plan. It includes all of the interstates in our state and several 4-lane thoroughfares. This NEVI plan also includes parameters for private providers to receive funding. And today in Smyrna, my organization is hosting a lunch and learn that includes speakers from the Department of Transportation, Georgia Power, and a local charging station provider. We have more than 25 companies, which represent more than 300 locations in Georgia, attending this, and this will be the first of many that we'll provide for our members. And we have a few non-members there too. So let's back to the rate case. The PSC parameters apply for the next 3 years. The fueling industry is the most competitive market in the country. It's the only commodity priced on the street. One of our fears is that utility companies provide us a rate to private providers who will need to have some sort of markup on that to cover their costs. But if they deploy a charging station, what will they charge themselves? The same rate? Will it include demand charges? There's nothing to require them to charge the same rate as a producer, distributor, and now a retailer. So will we be able to compete? Don't get me wrong, I am very thankful for Georgia Power. They are a fantastic company. My dad retired from Georgia Power at 52 years old with a child still in high school. And so they do a great job of taking care of their employees, helped raise me, and do a great job of keeping our lights on and the air conditioner. House Bill 406 allows for the resale of power. It also creates the tax structure for kilowatts sold, allows for the Department of Agriculture to inspect the systems. Sections 10.1.222 through sections 10.1.228 of the bill are almost identical to sections 10.1.149 and 10.1.167, which currently regulates the more than 150,000 gas pumps in our state. Additionally, it allows for the Department of Agriculture to share information with the Department of Revenue for the purposes of administering and enforcing the tax collections on remittance. I know Chairman Jaspers alluded to lines 77 through 80 earlier. I have not been able to find that exact, the way that's listed on there, 77 through 80 in code. So that gives me a little bit of heartburn, and I would hope that we can further that conversation. I hope we can arrive at a solution for all of our issues and pass legislation that both parties can agree on with a competitive and robust vehicle charging market. And I know I've dumped a lot of information on you. I'd be glad to try to answer any questions that I can, and thank you for hearing my testimony.
Thank you, Ms. Holland. I believe the Georgia Tech caucus has questions for you. Chairman Perkle.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I wish you hadn't referred to me with my alumni association, because I don't know what you have for the dumbest question of the day, but I will probably win it right now. Ms. Holland, so we've heard several people allude to the fact of how they are in favor of now charging per kilowatt rather than time spent. And I'm assuming that y'all are good with that.
We are in favor of charging by the kilowatt hour, yes.
So that was not the dumb part, if you could believe that. It's coming up now. It drives me nuts in my internal combustion engine when I pull up to fill up at one of the wonderful convenience stores we have around this state, and someone has started the pump and it's off and there's no pumps free. They've gone inside to use the bathroom, and I can see charging by the hour that people will be more incented to get a move on. I'm assuming that y'all have a plan in place. You've got your people that if you're charging by the kilowatt hour, what happens if, because it takes a little bit to charge those things up, seems like. And are you afraid there's going to be a glut of people that's just going to leave them here, charge them up because I'm not paid by how long it's been there, but how much juice actually goes in it, which I'm in favor of. That was just a point that hit me that I couldn't resist asking in a public forum, and I will greatly regret that.
Ms. Holland, did you want to comment on that?
I will. I think that's almost a chicken before the egg question, right? Because there's only about 3% EV vehicles on the road right now. I don't know what the percentage would be, comparing the number of cars to the number of pumps. I don't know what that percentage is. But for the NEVI program along the corridors, a location has to have a minimum, I believe, of 4 of the DC fast chargers. So there would be at least 4 chargers. Those locations have to be 50 miles apart and no less or no more than a mile from the interstate.
Yeah, and Chairman Perkle, to Representative Tran's question around idle time and Chairman Jasper's answer, that becomes then, that's up to the charging owner. You may want to suddenly move from kilowatt hours to now, once you're full, I'm just making this up right now, $5 a minute. that you don't pull that out. And again, I don't know if that's usurious, but I think at the end of the day, it does come down to what the market will bear. Chairman Dubnik.
I will do my best to channel my inner Tom McCall. So are you for it or against it?
We are for it, and
Okay.
we still have some things we'd like to discuss around it, but we are for it.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Ms. Holland, thank you so much. Our last speaker, Catherine Russell, please.
Good afternoon. I recognize a couple of faces, but maybe not everyone. I'm Catherine Russell. I'm the new Director of Policy at the Department of Ag, and just kind of wanted to come touch base, see if there were any questions. I don't want to spend any more time than necessary, but I did want to just come and let everyone know we are very excited about the potential in this emerging market and are interested in taking on any responsibilities that the legislature thinks that we should take on. I think, however, it's worth noting that this is an emerging technology, and some of the testing equipment is not commercially available at this time, so we would like some time to get up to speed so that we can get staff. We'll have to have inspectors that travel around just like we do for gas, but we think it's very important that we have a different fleet for that. We're not interested in taking gas samples to each electric vehicle charging station until we find one that's broken, and then we have a surprise. So there are some real safety concerns there. We're looking at having to purchase some pretty expensive equipment. I think they run about, Tesco is the only company we found so far that will measure by the kilowatt hour. There are lots that will tell you if they're on or off, but they won't really give you what I think the precipice of this bill is, and that's being able to determine the amount of power coming out. Those units are about $50,000 a piece. We have to, then there's this cool cord called a man in the middle that you can use between the tester and your vehicle. But there's some logistical issues. I testified before the Senate last week, and one of the senators mentioned this device called a load bank, which essentially allows the power coming off of the charger through the tester, and then it emits the energy, kind of like a big heater. And that will work for some of the slower chargers, but all of the faster DC chargers that we're looking at that are about to come online with the NEVI programs, they're going to need to discharge significantly more energy. And there's not a way for us to put that back on the grid right now. So anyway, that's just kind of a list of things we're thinking about, but we're very excited. And if anyone has any questions, we're trying to preliminarily get everything set up so that we will be available and ready to go when needed.
You do have a question.
Okay.
Representative Park.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Given the emerging nature of this new industry, I know there's previous testimony as to the time that may be needed for y'all to catch up for purposes of implementation and enforcement of some of these rules and regs. Do you have kind of a timeline as to what that might look like?
So that's a great question. And I will tell you that some other states are trying to push out to about 2028. I was hopeful that we could start sooner, but a couple of the problems that we're running into is just availability of the equipment, even vehicles right now. You know, we can only procure from certain dealers, and we were looking at the Ford electric vehicles. Unfortunately, they've ceased production right now because I think they're having some problems with things catching on fire. So we're gonna wait on that for a minute. Other states have moved forward, and then they're having to kind of roll back a little bit. And so I would love for us to jump in a handful of years, but I think that it would be prudent that we really examine what that looks like by looking at other states' experiences.
Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Park. Any other questions for Ms. Russell? Ms. Russell, you're cleared. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Chairman Jaspers, is there anything that you'd like to make a comment to the committee on?
Yes, sir, sure. got handed some of the information. You were asking about what's the fees on the EV annual licenses. Commercial is $316.54 currently, and non-commercial, that's what you'd have at home, is $210.96. That's those charged at home. Just right now, just a couple of little things. I had made some notes just on some comments some folks have made. You know, currently, fuel, like everything else, has sales tax on it. You know, there's no difference between, and I think we're trying to make the difference in that there's no difference between electricity, gasoline, propane, hydrogen, whatever comes down the road currently there. Let's see. We're welcome. I know the chairman and vice chairman and I have talked about some type of display difference with technology, and the vice chairman and I talked about this morning. It's maybe an amendment to kind of clarify that. I appreciate that. But for Ms. Holland, who said we had heard from her ad nauseum. Now, Ms. Holland, you're never ad nauseum, and that's for sure. We love you, and we appreciate you being a great advocate for the convenience store associations, and I look forward to working with you.
Thank you, Chairman Jaspers. Chair recognizes Chairman Dubnik.
Mr. Chairman, at the appropriate time, I'd like to be recognized for a motion.
I think that's the appropriate time.
Mr. Chairman, I move that House Bill 406, LC 393742 do pass.
I got a first and I got a second. I probably a motion and a second. Do we have any discussion? Oh, I apologize, Chairman Parsons. Chairman Parsons.
Oh, just a couple of things. I'm a signer of the bill, so I got to be careful what kind of question I ask. And I know we got a motion in a second, so I did want to ask the author during our meetings on the study committee. We also talked about, as far as the revenue from the for the roads and bridges, we talked about miles driven. And I remember in one of those meetings, I had mentioned that I think every vehicle that I can think of, except maybe a Yugo in the last 35 years, has a capability in the computer that records what the mileage is at that particular point. And here in Metro Atlanta, I know I discussed that there were apparently privacy issues involved, but here in Metro Atlanta, we have to do that all the time with our every year. We have to take the car, get the emissions, and they know exactly how many miles that car has been driven since the last time. I was just curious, and I certainly support this. I'm going to vote for it, and I am a signer on the bill. But I mean, was that not taken when you had this bill drawn up? Was that not something that you had taken into consideration?
Yes, sir. I think early on in my conversation, as my speech here today, there's a test project by GDOT to look specifically at that and how it works and how it would be implemented. I don't think we're at the point right now, Chairman Parsons, just to be able to jump into that and make that. And I know Senator Gooch and I have talked about it a number of times, and I don't think we're just there yet. Okay. We're here at this, and
well, I appreciate it. I do think we're there because of the fact I take my car into emissions, and they know that all they do is plug it in, and we have to do that in Metro Atlanta. I know people in other parts of the state don't. So if there's any secrecy issues with that, we don't get to share that in Metro Atlanta because we have to take that in, and that's something that's recorded in the car on the computer, and you can get it. And like I say, unless you bought a Yugo or some kind of a Russian SUV or something.
You really had a Yugo?
I almost bought one once.
Okay, well, I want to make sure.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Chairman Parsons.
Thank you, Chairman Parsons. Representative Thomas.
I'd like to make an amendment.
This is the proper time to offer that, please.
Yeah, at the proper time.
This is the proper time.
So line 94, after prominently displaying, I'd like to add the language, or providing the required information to a remote display. And I'd be more than happy to read that again.
Please do.
Okay. I'll start on line item 93 with the amendment. All electrical vehicle charging stations shall be capable of accurately measuring and prominently displaying or providing the required information to a remote display the amount of electricity delivered to each electric vehicle on a per kilowatt hour basis.
That's offered as a friendly amendment.
That's offered as a friendly amendment.
Bill sponsor.
Taken as friendly.
Thank you very much, Chairman Jaspers. Any other comments from? We're in a position now to take a vote. I'm sorry. Oh, my apologies. I apologize. Is there a second? We got the second. Okay, great.
Second.
My apologies. I needed the Georgia Tech caucus to help me out. All right. We're now postured to take a vote on the amended bill. So, everyone comfortable with that? Any questions? Conversation? No other amendments? Correct. All right. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes, sir.
Thank you, Mr.
You're on
Chairman.
the rules.
Thank you, committee.
We're going to quickly move to the sub for 369.
I think it was supposed to be somewhere else too, but.
No, we voted on the bill as amended. But wait, hold on.
You voted as the amendment.
We voted on the amendment, and then we voted.
We got a lawyer here. Where's she at? What's she saying? Is that yours, Matt?
Nope, that's you, dog.
Okay, thank you.
Another drink. Nice job, buddy.
Are they still meeting?
This is the substitute to 369.
Happily here.
Huh? I know. I was down here trying to. This is for you, Locust Grove. It's an easy one for you.
We're going to bring the meeting back to order. Chairman Carpenter, given the fact that the committee just received the sub, if it's possible, if you could go through maybe not a high-level overview, but maybe just a slightly more detailed than high-level, and then we'll go ahead and we'll see if there's any questions from the committee, okay?
All right,
All right,
thank you, committee. Thank you, Chairman. 369. I've always wanted to say House Bill 369. Anyway, LC 365526S is what we're working off of. It's a simple bill. So a few years ago, with the acceleration of COVID, our house passed an alcohol delivery bill that would allow third-party delivery folks to bring alcohol to your house. And at the time, we didn't realize the challenges that I think that laid before us as a state on this legislation. So that's what this bill does. It seeks to remedy something I think is a common sense approach to delivering alcohol in the state. And basically, it changes local jurisdiction to a 25-mile radius. And the point is, if I'm in a county, if I'm here and the county line's right beside me and I've got a liquor store 2 minutes from my house, if they're in the other county, I can't order alcohol from that liquor store, even though it's very possible that store is the closest store to me. And so what this bill would do would allow the delivery services to pick up my product and bring it across that county line and give it to me. The same situation with the legislation as before. If they come to bring me that alcohol and I'm not home, it goes back to the liquor store and I can either go pick it up or ask them to re-deliver it. The taxes are paid where it's picked up. Just like if I'm driving home today and I stop in Marietta at the liquor store and I buy a bottle of Crown Royal, All right, I pay the tax there, I go home and drink it. We're still taxing that product where it is purchased. And so that's what this bill seeks to do. There's been some issues around the state where we've had this jurisdictional issues, whether it's from city to county or county to city. And obviously, I'll be glad to take some questions from you, but it's a pretty simple bill.
Thank you, Chairman Carpenter. The committee may be wondering why this is in front of us. The prior bill before the sub was with PDDs, correct?
You know, it's like a lot of things in this world. Sometimes things appear different when they hit your desk, and this is just an opportunity to discuss what we believe is a technology platform with the delivery services, third-party delivery services, in addressing this issue.
Representative Park.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a quick question. Why 25 miles as a limitation? Why not?
We're not hard set on 25 miles. We just figured that was with some of the South Georgia counties that could be helpful.
Thank you.
Chairman Perkle.
Let me get my question rephrased.
Chairman Parsons.
I just wanted to ask, I don't have any problem with the bill, but I'm just wondering how you consider it to be a technology bill.
Well, I mean, you know, Uber's technology, apps, that all flows technology, right? Would you agree with that? I mean, I guess we could always address Uber and motor vehicles, but we've addressed it in other committees in the past.
Chairman Parsons, are you done? Okay.
Thank you.
I can't see who 15 is. I'm so sorry. Oh, I'm sorry. Chairman Jaspers.
Thank you, Chairman Carpenter. Say, it's like 25 miles. Yeah, I do live in a rural area, and that would put me into 4 different counties. And it seems like a broad reach that even the most adventurous Uber driver would want to go that far to deliver a 39 bottle of Crown Royal. So it seems to me like there needs to be this needs to be drawn into a bit tighter balls to me.
Sure, I mean, I think that's fair conversation for the committees. Obviously, if you got a particular bourbon that you're looking for that only happens to be 3 counties over, and you want to be able to order that bourbon, you would appreciate this.
It would be one of those I couldn't get anyway, unless you worked it out for me.
Right. Well, I just know from the top of Whitfield County to the bottom of Whitfield County is about 25 miles. So you could still be dealing with the same issues. If I have a liquor store in my northern city of Varnell trying to get down to the south end of Whitfield County in another jurisdiction. So that was the point, is some counties are wide.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir. Chairman Perkle.
Okay, I'm gonna try this. So I'm almost at planting season on the farm. And whenever I get some chemicals delivered to the barn, if it happens to be hazardous or flammable, I got to put the placards on and whatever. And not wanting to get into the weeds on this, but some of the, I think some of the alcohol that's transported would it be flammable? Do they have to have hazardous placard on any of this?
No, but you're falling into the same, with the previous legislation, the discussion has already been had on what can be carried, what can't be carried, making sure somebody there with a driver's license when it gets delivered that's old enough to accept the alcohol.
And it can only be intrastate?
That's right.
Okay.
And then obviously the same language about not applying to dry county. So if I'm in a dry county, I can't order and have it delivered into my dry county.
Chairman Perkle, anything else?
No, sir. I don't know enough about the subject to comment much.
I'm about to make it a tech bill. Representative Thomas.
I just have one quick question. You had mentioned about collection of taxes. So if I shopped around and I tried to figure out who had the best tax rates, and then is it possible? I guess, like, typically it's where it's sold, right? Well, technically, isn't that where the exchange happens?
So no, I think that when we set this up, it was the same deal as the person that orders the alcohol. I pay for it at that store, and then I'm the owner of the property. It is just being brought to me through that delivery service. Does that make sense? So it's still paid, the taxes are paid where it's bought. It's just delivered to me after the fact. So the point of sale is not at my house. The point of sale is where the liquor's picked up. Does that make sense? Same with,
It's a little nuance, but okay.
Yeah, yeah.
All right, thank you.
So Chairman Carpenter, if I have a local liquor store in Forsyth County that I like to frequent, what you're asking for is the ability, and assuming it's in North Forsyth County, which may be 25 miles away from me in South Forsyth County, you're suggesting that I can still pick that liquor store up in North Forsyth to deliver to me, and the tax obviously would stay within Forsyth County?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. Representative Buckner?
I'm going to make this a technology question. Using my iPhone, I Googled DoorDash and found that their usual delivery radius is 5 to 30 miles. Does that help you in it all?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, you know, I think like most things, the private sector will figure out that. We're just saying 25, we'll just cap it at 25. If it's not profitable for them to deliver over 10, they won't deliver over 10. So I think those things the private sector will sort out.
Chairman Prince?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. At the proper time, I'd like to make a motion.
Thank you. Is it Representative Train?
Just a quick question. Does this impact distilleries and wineries?
No, it shouldn't. No.
Okay.
It has to come from a retailer, right? And I think those that's a different license.
Okay. Chairman Jaspers?
Just real quick. So how would this affect someone like UPS or others that operate personal delivery services? You know, that they do this now. This help, hurt? What's their?
I don't think it'll really have much to do with them. I mean, obviously, if they wanted to enter this field, they could. It would have to be purchased at a retailer. The customer would have to purchase at the retailer, and then they would haul it. So I'm sure they could get into the business. It's not really, to me, in their model, but you know, obviously, it's free market. People can come and go as they please.
Chairman Jaspers, any follow-up?
Yep, I'm good, thank you.
This is clearly different than the initial bill, because the initial bill referred to the PDDs, which we did last year, the personal delivery devices for Amazon, UPS, et cetera. The people called it the robot bill. That was signed into effect last year. Does this bill affect the PDD legislation that we put into effect last year?
No, sir, not at all.
Okay, so there's no
I was a big fan of that legislation. I thought they should have been able to drive a little faster, but you know, I'm just a small cog in the wheel.
Many steps. Don't worry. In 2 years, those things will be going at the speed of light. Representative Cox.
Hey, quick question. I live on the Forsyth-Dawson County line.
Bam, there you go.
Yeah,
This bill's for you, baby. What's that? This bud's for you. This bill's for you, baby.
You know, the running the moonshine in Dawsonville is a different world, but that's okay. All right, question. Sales tax. So if I order something from Amazon and it delivers to my house, that sales tax from the sale to Amazon delivered goes where? To what county? Secondly, in this, if I bought something in Dawsonville and it delivered to Forsyth County, are we talking the same logic, or is this a little bit different?
No, I think it's different because it's alcohol, so it actually would happen in Dawson County. The sales tax would be collected and remitted in Dawson County where the alcohol is picked up, because the people delivering the alcohol, they don't have a retail license. So they are literally just carrying it across to you in Forsyth. Does that make sense?
Understand, because we may have Chick-fil-A delivering to my daughter at my house as well. So I get it from Dawsonville. So my question is, from a sales and use tax reporting standpoint, from a business in Dawsonville, that seems somewhat cumbersome. No?
No, because they're going to be reporting in Dawsonville just like they always have. And I would challenge you that probably Chick-fil-A is reporting, that store is reporting in Dawsonville.
In Dawsonville. But someone like Amazon, if it's another, let's say at Statesboro, delivering to Forsyth County, that does land in Forsyth County, doesn't it? Do we know the answer to that?
I don't know the answer. I would assume that it would, for Amazon, it would be in the county it's dropped, because it may be coming from out of state.
Just wondering if there's a
sure. So otherwise,
bit of a
you know, if
dilemma,
it's coming
that's
out
all.
of Tennessee or any other state, then obviously the only jurisdiction that they could tax and remit the tax would be your Forsyth.
Okay.
But I think alcohol is just a hat.
Just my question. Right.
Sure, fair question.
Representative Cox, this body with Chairman Harrell, in 2019, because of the Wayfair decision, and correct me, Representative Oliver, if I'm off on the Wayfair decision, we went ahead and we did the sales tax in terms of who has to pay for tax, in terms of the minimum number of transactions, et cetera. So that effectively made it where even if you came out of state with your product, if you came into our state and you're a seller, and forgive me, minimum transactions of 250, I think it was, or 250,000, then you did have to pay sales tax within the state of Georgia. But we can get you the additional information on that. In the county that it landed, correct. Yep. But again, we can get you that, and again, that was 2019, I believe. Okay. Chairman Jaspers.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a quick comment based off what you kind of addressed a moment ago. I think this bill needs to be in regulated industries. They're the ones that deal with this regulation revolving anything around the delivery of alcohol, and their expertise lies in this. And just my concern is that, you know, they know the code sections, they know the what's and wherefores about it, and I just have to make that statement.
Well, Chairman Jaspers, we're not going to take a vote on this for a lot of the reasons that you just said. We just got the sub.
Okay, thank you.
Again, the initial bill had PDDs in it.
Yes, sir. Okay,
and
thank
since the initial bill had PDDs, there was PDDs comes into here. So that's what's kind of, I think our thinking is probably same line.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate it.
I don't see any other questions. Chairman Carpenter, thank you very much for your time. Like I just said, we're going to go hearing only on this just because the committee just got the sub. And why don't we catch some time on the floor tomorrow, okay?
That sounds great.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks a
And
lot.
I would add, sometimes we hear nursing bills that are not in health that end up in regulated industries. So it is the posture of this body to hear stuff that's in different committees.
I appreciate that. Anything from the committee? Yes.
I know about everybody that was in the public is gone, but I would be remiss, and I appreciate you, appreciate the committee, and Rick Jaspers with his bill today. I thought it was a good bill. He worked really hard on. I cannot help but notice that Chairman Powell's bill has been pulled out. But I'd be remiss if I didn't say that, and I got a couple of shout outs here, which I'm always glad to get, whether deserved or not, but the committee that the EV charging issue went through last year, Energy, Utilities, and Telecommunications spent a lot of time, and some of the new people wouldn't even know that. But we had, as Angela Holland mentioned, I mean, it was many hours of hearings we had on that. But with Chairman Powell's bill not here, there's some issues left unattended to in his bill related to Georgia Power, and I mean, that is what it is. I mean, it is what it may, but related to a separate entity for Georgia Power to deliver that service with their stations that they put in, and also recovery of costs. I mean, I mean, there are other issues too, but some very important issues related to Georgia Power that are just kind of now going away with Chairman Powell's bill being withdrawn. But mainly, I just wanted to say a shout out to the EUT committee for the work they did last year. But thank you for looking at it this year.
Well, thank you very much, Chairman Parsons, and we do appreciate the work that committee did, along with the study committee. And in terms of Chairman Powell's bill, I don't necessarily feel as if we are at, I'll say, the finish line on that. We're still pondering what's the best thing to do with 307, and we'll make sure that this committee finds out about that.
Advice, I'll be glad to.
I'm happy to come to your office if there are. Oh wait, pardon me. I was about to adjourn us. Representative Evans.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just can't help but notice that today is Legislative Day 22, and the committee spent a lot of time today. Representative Carpenter spent a lot of time today presenting this bill. I don't know what all went on before it got here. I see it as, I mean, you're the chairman. Our speaker assigned it here for a reason. It does deal with delivery technology platforms. It's obviously not my call, but I just wanted to make the point that I hate to kill a bill that solves a problem that we are seeing in Georgia because we're going to run out of time, because we decided at the 11th hour that it shouldn't be in our committee when that's not even our call anyway.
So Representative Evans, thank you very much. The candor is highly appreciated. I wanted to make sure, the first reason why I wanted to just go hearing only is because you guys got the sub about 14 seconds before we were able to present. And I really would like to have it where you guys have it in your hand and you have an opportunity to, I'll say, digest that information. I'm respectful of Chairman Jasper's concerns, along with the change from, if many of you, I know I did, I read the original 369 and it had the PDDs in it. So I was prepared for, I'll say, a PDD sub. So I think what I'd like to be able to do, even though our standing meeting is Wednesday, if there is a reconsideration of 369, we can absolutely do that. Well, we can do it tomorrow, we can do it Monday, but I don't believe we need to wait until Wednesday, which would be day 26. So I completely understand and I appreciate your candor and you mentioning it to the committee, so thank you so much.
Thank you.